There are 15 images composed of different shapes such as rings, hooks, cubes, cones, cylinders, wires, and a pair of wheels. Participants in the experiment were tasked with creating an original and practical object using 3 of the images within a 5-minute time limit. They were divided into 2 random groups. The first group was allowed to freely choose any 3 necessary images, while the second group was given 3 randomly selected images. Judges evaluated the creations for originality and practicality. Which group's results were more creative? The second group's creations were judged to be higher in both originality and practicality. This experiment, conducted by cognitive psychologist Ronald Finke, demonstrates that constraints, such as resource scarcity or deprivation, can foster greater creativity compared to situations with abundant resources and freedom of choice. Why did people not demonstrate creativity, even though they had the freedom to choose? This phenomenon can be explained by functional fixedness, which refers to a cognitive bias that limits an object's use to its traditional function. When resources are scarce or there are constraints on how tools can be used, we recognize the difficulty of solving problems in traditional ways, which motivates us to break free from functional fixedness and approach the problem from new angles. To explain the source of creativity more scientifically, neuroscientists investigate what happens in our brains at the moment creativity is expressed. Are creative ideas generated by the activation of specific parts of the brain? They examined the brains of artists. Rebecca Chamberlain and her colleagues had 21 art major students and 23 non-art major students, a total of 44 participants, perform drawing tasks, and then compared their brains using a brain imaging analysis technique called voxel-based morphometry. It was confirmed that the brains of artists are structurally different from those of non-artists. Observational drawing skills are positively correlated with greater gray matter density in the left anterior cerebellum and the right medial frontal gyrus. Additionally, art students generally have a higher gray matter density in the right precuneus compared to non-art students. These findings indicate that the ability to draw from observation is determined by the structure of brain regions associated with fine motor control and procedural memory, and overall artistic capability varies depending on the level of activation of regions responsible for manipulating and creatively reconstructing visual images. Recent studies on the neurological basis of human creativity have revealed that artistic creativity and scientific creativity are correlated with the gray matter volume in different brain regions. Artistic creativity depends on the activation of the salience network, while scientific creativity is associated with the brain's executive attention network and areas involved in semantic processing. The salience network is a collection of brain regions that monitor the entire brain to help select more valuable targets from various competing stimuli. This network connects and mediates transitions between different neural networks, enabling us to focus on important tasks. On the other hand, the executive attention network is activated when focusing on a given problem to find novel solutions. This network, also referred to as the central executive network or the executive control network, plays a pivotal role in cognitive functions such as formulating precise questions for problem solving, sustaining attention throughout task execution, engaging in rigorous reasoning, and facilitating decision-making processes. Other studies have added an intriguing discovery. The brain's default mode network also contributes to the formation of creative thought. The stronger the functional connectivity between the inferior prefrontal cortex and the default mode network, the greater our ability to produce creative ideas. The default mode network is a region of the brain that is activated when we are resting idly or walking, not engaged in any specific tasks. Humanity has evolved to set this resting state of the brain as the default mode to minimize physical energy consumption. The hippocampus, which is closely associated with memory storage and future-oriented imagination, is also part of the default mode network. When we allow ourselves to drift into aimless thoughts, our brain forms networks distinct from those in a conscious state, which can suddenly result in creativity. This suggests that, contrary to the common belief that creativity emerges from deep immersion in a single thought, creative thinking might actually occur when we are in a relaxed state, less focused on external sensory information. To date, neuroscience studies have not been able to identify specific brain regions responsible for creativity. Instead, creativity appears when networks within the brain, which usually do not communicate with each other, are activated simultaneously, attempting to form new connections. In summary, when faced with unresolved problems, we activate the executive attention network to seek solutions. However, if a suitable solution is not found, we might step back from the problem and let our minds wander. During these moments, the brain's default mode network potentially aids in divergent thinking for problem solving. And at the moment when we intuitively grasp the clue to a creative solution, the salience network shifts back to a cognitive mode, leading that intuition into the realm of consciousness. This is the moment we realize a creative solution. Ultimately, neuroscience suggests that creativity manifests itself when functional connections between previously unrelated brain areas are strengthened to integrate seemingly unrelated elements. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, once said that creativity is simply the process of connecting existing objects or experiences in new ways. From an evolutionary perspective, creative thinking is seen as a product of the brain's pattern-seeking tendency. Designed to perform functions closely related to daily life, our brain has evolved to constantly analyze patterns and track causality to survive uncertain situations. Experiencing uncertainty, or unprecedented chaos and disorder, indicates an awareness of the constraints and deficiencies in our usual ways of thinking and existing knowledge. Thus, creative thinking begins with the ability to perceive disorder. Is the disorder we perceive actually disorder in nature itself? Physicist David Bohm argues that observing what appears to be disorder in nature does not necessarily indicate a complete absence of order. Instead, he suggests that what we perceive as disorder may indeed be part of a deeper, more complex order that is not immediately apparent. Nature is constantly generating new structural orders. Bohm defines the activity of a scientist as perceiving a previously unknown structural order within the sensed natural order. In On Creativity, Bohm suggests that scientists strive to uncover a sense of wholeness constituting an inherent harmony within the reality they inhabit, which resonates with the perception of beauty. Scientific creativity is the ability to reconstruct new meanings that reveal differences from existing ones. Scientists strive to uncover unknown totalities and laws within the natural order as revealed through various phenomena, and from these newly perceived structures and orders, beauty emerges. Although different from the creativity of artists, who create beauty through their works, scientific creativity also connects with artistic creativity in its pursuit of harmony and beauty in new orders. Ultimately, Bohm describes creativity as a cognitive process of recognizing a hidden order rather than the explicated order presented to us. The new order that seems to suddenly emerge in chaotic or complex situations is not entirely unprecedented. Rather, it represents a new relevance formed through the reorganization of accumulated knowledge and experiences. Terra Incognita refers to unexplored, unknown lands that cannot be marked on a map. It also symbolically represents realms that humanity has never experienced before. Socrates said, "I know that I know nothing." But how can we ask questions about things we don't know, or things we don't even know exist? Transitioning from the unknown to the known is not simply about navigating with a completed map to a predetermined destination. It is a performative process of exploring Terra Incognita and progressively completing the map along the way. Scientists can perceive the world differently by linking newly discovered facts to seemingly unrelated existing scientific knowledge. Isn't perceiving newly discovered orders in the existing world ultimately a form of creativity in the pursuit of truth? In the age of artificial intelligence, what navigational skills do we need to reach new truths?